Welcome back to part 2. Okay, so now everything is in place so that we can enter a name or unique identifier and we can use this to load up our avatar. Now, before we go on and move to the code that we'll be writing to create and render our avatar, we maybe want to do a couple of small tweaks. So the first thing that I want to do is change the padding of this input text because it goes edge to edge at the moment, and I want to kind of just give it a little bit of space from the edges. So the way we can do that is to say edge insets dot symmetric. And here we're gonna give it an horizontal padding of 16 points. If I save this and reload, I can see that now we have a little bit of space on the left and on the right. The other thing that I want to do is to extract this children array out of the column in here, because we will be adding multiple values to this column. And so for now, just to make things a little bit tidier, I'm going to say var children. And here we're just going to take the contents of this field and put it in here. And then when we use it, we're just gonna say children is this array of children that I just created. So this will just make things a little bit tidier when we add more code in here. And the last thing that I want to do is to also add some vertical padding to each of the elements that will go inside the children array in here. And to do that, I'm gonna create a little helper class that I'm going to name vertical padding. And this is going to extend stateless widget. And this is going to be a class that creates a child. So it will obviously have a build method. Inside here, we're going to return a new padding. And this will specify a padding value of edge insets dot symmetric again, with this time vertical padding of 8 points, which I think will be enough for us. And this also takes a child. So the way we want to do this is to give the vertical padding itself the ability to specify a child. And so the way we're going to do this is to declare a final widget child. And we're gonna give it a way to pass it in when the object is created. So here now we have a child that we can put in here. Okay, save, and here we go. So what we've done here is just create a very simple class, which is just a simple wrapper for the padding component that comes out of the widget collection in Flutter. And this is going to save us quite a bit of typing, because if you have a lot of different widgets that you want to nest inside padding, you will normally have to type in this edge insets.symmetric. And so this is just a way for us to kind of do away with that code. And in fact, let's see how we're going to use this. So in our children array here, we had originally specified this text form field, which it just renders right at the top in here. So what happens is that if now we enter a new vertical padding in here with a child of text form field, and we also close it up here and we save, what's going to happen is that now the spacing has increased a little bit. And just to show you that this is working, if we go down here and we increase the padding to a much higher value, such as 80 for example, you can see how this is now increased by quite a lot. So restore it and we are ready to carry on. Okay, so now that our input form is complete, we are ready to start implementing the avatar widget that we'll be using in this demo. And just as a quick reminder, this is what we are aiming for. So once we complete the code for this video, we want to be able to type in a name in here, and this avatar image will be loading. So let's create a new component, a new widget, which we'll be using to represent our avatar. Okay, so we're going to create a new file, which will be called avatar.dart. And inside here, we're going to add some code. So we're going to create a class avatar, which in this case will extend stateful widget, and I'll show you in a second why that needs to be a stateful widget. As usual, we need to remember to import material package from Flutter, and as usual, because this is a stateful widget, we need to implement a create state method like so, and we are also going to need avatar state class, which will extend state of avatar, and this is a class that will include a build method. Okay, as a last step here, we're just going to make this method return a new avatar state. And this is all the scaffolding that we need to have in place to create and use our avatar. We also actually want to give it a couple of extra parameters. One is going to be a string, which will represent the URL we will be using to load the avatar image from the RoboHash API. And the other one is going to be the size that we will use in pixels when we want to render the avatar on screen. Because this will be called from outside, we want to give it a way to specify the URL and the size. And we are good to go for now. Now that we created the widget, I'm just gonna make sure here that we create just a container. So currently this will just render some empty content. And I just want to wire it up as well so that we're going to be able to use it within our avatar page. So the first thing that we're gonna do in here is to actually import our avatar file that we just created. And if we scroll down to the code that actually creates the avatar page, we see how we specified a column which has a children array, and in here we have this build input form which we have previously implemented. Let's just take this code out in here for a second, and what we're gonna do is say var children, which is going to be for now just this build input form. And the next thing that we want to do after making sure that we actually use this new external array is to make sure that we can render the avatar. Now, it only makes sense to really try to render the avatar if we have given, if we have a name that we can use for it. And so one way to check this is to say that if the name, the length is greater than 0, which means we have a non-empty string, then what we can do is to try to generate a URL. So we're going to say var URL, and this is going to be https robohash.org, which is our API. And here we're gonna say use the name to generate an avatar. The next thing that we can do here is now to create the actual avatar. And we can do this by new avatar. We're gonna give it the URL that we've just generated, and we're also gonna give it a size. For now, let's give it 150 points. Okay, good. Now that we have created this avatar, the next thing that we can do is to add it to this children array. And the way we're going to do that is to say the children array, we're going to add all. The reason I'm calling add all with an array parameter here is that we're going to be adding two things. So one of them is going to be a new vertical padding, which contains the avatar as a child. The second one is going to be a text, which is also going to be wrapped within a vertical padding. And here we're going to say new text, and inside we just give credit to RoboHash. So courtesy of robohash.org. Okay, I think we are good at this stage. Okay, so if we compile and run the application on the simulator, we should now see some results. And what I'm expecting is that I'm going to be able to type a name, and I will just see the text here, courtesy of robohash.org. We don't really see the avatar yet, and that's because we haven't really implemented anything other than just an empty container. So the next step is to actually go and add the code that we'll be using to load the avatar from the network. But in order to do that, we need to install an additional package in our Flutter application. And as usual, the packages to be installed go inside this pubspec.yaml file. The package that we actually want is called HTTP. And we're just going to work out here what's the latest version to be using, which is 0.11.3 plus 16. So if we head back to our editor, we can now here specify a new dependency called HTTP, and we're going to give it this version number. I'm saving the project, so this is now installed within my machine. And the next thing that I can do is to actually import the HTTP package that I just installed inside my avatar widget page, and this way I can use it when I actually load the avatar. I'm going to do one small change here, and I'm going to say that I want to import this as HTTP, which is essentially a way to give it a name to reference all the methods that are inside this file. Okay, so we're gonna need a couple of extra ingredients in here in order to render our avatar. The first one I'm going to introduce now, and is going to be a method that will return a widget. And I'm going to call this widget loading widget. Now, what this will do is to use a new component that we haven't explored yet in Flutter, which is called FutureBuilder. And what this component does is give you a way to load something that will be available to you in the future. So for example, an image that comes from the network, such as in this case, and it gives you a little bit of placeholder code to show something temporarily while the final image is not downloaded yet. So I'm just going to type in the code for how this FutureBuilder is going to be used in this demo, and then I will explain it. So just bear with me for a second and we'll get there. So we're going to return a new FutureBuilder, which will work on types UI int 8 list, and it will take two parameters. One is a future, which we're going to call fetch avatar, and the other parameter is a builder, which takes itself two parameters. One is a context, and the other one is called snapshot, which contains a snapshot of the data that we have downloaded. This builder is something that needs to return a value. And so in here, we're going to say if snapshot.has data, then in this case, it means that we are good. So we're going to return a new image.memory. And this will use snapshot.data. Otherwise, if we don't have data, then we're going to say that if snapshot.hasError, then, well, we might want to print the snapshot error. So one way to do that is to say snapshot.error. But also we want to display something to the user. And one way to do this is to say return new center with a child. So we are just going to center a text in here. And inside here, to represent the fact that we have an error, we're just quickly going to add an emoji, just to keep things simple. And something that, for example, looks like this, I think will do just fine. We want to make this test quite big, so we're going to give it a text style with a font size of 72 points. Let me also just quickly fix a couple of errors here, so we should be able to do this. And the next thing that we want to do is else, and we need to take care of the case where the avatar is not loaded yet, it's still loading from the network. And in this case, all we want to do is just to present a spinning indicator, just to signal to the user the fact that the avatar is loading. So the way we can do that is to say that this will have a child, and we're gonna use a circular progress indicator in this case. We also want to give this a little bit of padding so it's nice and centered and it's not too big. And one way to do this would be to use edge insets.all, and we want to make this relative to the size of the widget that we pass in as a parameter. So this is just a little bit of math, but all it does is just to size the progress indicator in a way that will look good. Okay, so I'm almost done implementing my FutureBuilder. We can see here that there's a couple of red lines to indicate errors. So I'm just gonna fix these as well. And what we need to do is define a method which is called fetchAvatar. And this is going to be an asynchronous method. So it will return a future of type uint8list. And it's gonna be called fetchAvatar. Asynchronous, and what it does is to say http.response, so create a response, which is what we get by calling await http.get, and here we just pass the URL that comes from outside, and here all we do is return our response dot body white. So this is what we have to do. Because here we're using a future, we also need to remember to import dart.async. So that will take care of that. And because we are using this UI int8 list, we also need to import another thing called dart type data. Okay, so now all the code should compile. Okay, so before we go further, I just want to take a little bit of time to explain what we've done here, because this bit of code here does quite a lot of different things. So I think it's worth to explain it so that it can be better understood. Okay, so the main thing that we do here is to create a FutureBuilder object, which is essentially a widget, special widget that we can use to load something asynchronously. Now the way it knows how to load the content is with this future parameter, which we have created as a separate method. What this method does is use the HTTP package that we have installed to request some content from the network at a given URL. And once it gets the content, we can return it as an array of bytes. This array of bytes is of type uint8list, and for this reason, this is the type that we specify in our FutureBuilder. Now, downloading the image is taken care of this by this method, but with them we need to specify a builder as well. Now the builder gives us a snapshot, which is actually the object that holds the data if there is some. So here we have a multiple if branch with 3 different cases, and what we are doing is to check that if we do have some data, then what we want to do is return an image object which is loading the image data from memory, like so. But if this has not been successful, and for example we encounter an error, we want to notify the user that this has happened, so we print a message. And also, instead of presenting the avatar, we use this code here to simply present a text with a cross sign in the middle to indicate that there has been an error. The other state that we need to take care of is the progress state, which is essentially what happens when the image is still loading from the network. So when the image is loading from the network, what we want to do is just to show a progress indicator. And we do that by wrapping it inside a container and adding some padding to it. So this is all there is in terms of the FutureBuilder. It's a very powerful widget that you can use whenever you load things from the network and you need some kind of placeholder to display some widgets while the content that you want is not yet ready. Okay, so now that the hard work is done, I think we are ready to see our FutureBuilder in action. And the way we're going to do that very quickly now is to just specify a child for our container. And here we're going to say loading widget. And if we quickly save and refresh, we can see what happened here. So the progress indicator appeared for a little bit, and after the image is loaded, it's just displayed right in place here. So this shows how we can load images from the network. And the other thing that we could do, for example, here would be to change the name. And if we do this, we're gonna get a different image. Next, we're going to improve our avatar widget by adding some styling properties and make it look good. So I'll see you on the next video.